Welcome back to Big Mouth and welcome to yet another edition of the dceu Daily. As I record this, it's Wednesday. That means there's one more day to go to Snydercut Day. Finally, after all these years and all the chatting and all the tweets and posting and videos, tomorrow on Thursday the 18th of March, finally, Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut will be released globally at the same time for everyone to see. Let's hope no mistakes happen and we can actually see this film. Actually, I don't even know if it's going to be possible for me to see this film tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure that I'll be able to pay-per-view it. If I can't pay-per-view it, there's no HBO Max for me. There's no other avenue here in Cyprus for me to watch it. So fingers crossed I find some way of watching this movie. It's so very exciting. It's like Christmas Eve, isn't it? It does feel like something remarkable is happening. Now, we've got a bit to discuss today, and a little bit later on I'll be reviewing episode 4 of Superman and Lois. I'm very excited to do so. Got a bit to say about that show as well. First of all, as it's a day before, our infinite dreams are coming true. Dreams that we never thought were possible when we were fighting for this thing. When I went to the cinema, and I've discussed this before, but I'm going to come at it from a different angle. When I first went to see Justice League, I was naive, like millions of people around the world, that this was a Zack Snyder film that was just polished off by Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon was a hero to me. I loved Buffy. I love Angel. I loved everything that he did. For me, the man was a genius. And from the outside looking in, he seemed like a nice guy. Obviously, we know better now. But none of us knew that at the time. So I just thought he genuinely was a friend of Zack Snyder's and he was going to polish off the film. Again, we know that's not true now. And so we had all the trailers and it was very exciting. And we had Comic-Con and the actors were doing a good job of pretending that everything was all right. Everyone was. Very suspiciously, Joss Whedon wasn't at Comic-Con. So you can already tell, Houston, there was a problem. Also, Joss Whedon tried his utmost to not have any connection to the film. He didn't talk about it publicly, nothing. I thought back then that, that's him just trying to say, look, this is Zack's movie. I don't want any limelight here. So I kind of took it that way. So we also had this kind of red flag of Junkie XL, Tom Hokenberg, being booted off the project. He came out on Twitter, on his account, and said, these things happen. So clearly he was pushed off. So we had another composer, right? A composer that's done many great themes. So even though I was disappointed, I still thought, well, this is a win-win kind of thing. We've lost Tom, but this guy's pretty good. And then we were slowly hearing that he was going to use John Williams' Superman theme faintly, and he was going to use his own Batman theme. So it was kind of interesting. I was excited for this because as a fan of the 78 movie, obviously now, if I knew then what I knew now, it wouldn't be an issue, would it? So going into this movie, I expected to see 2 hours of epicness. Nothing in the trailers suggested that there were any issues with the movie. One of the big mistakes that they made was allow Henry Cavill to tell us publicly that he did have a tash and they were going to remove it using CGI VFX. They probably should have kept that to themselves. Would we still have noticed the botched up job on his upper lip? I didn't notice it when I first saw the film, and I think I've mentioned that on this channel and on the dceu Daily before. And so going in to watch this, the opening scene with Superman and the car keys thing, I thought it was kind of a nice way to kind of detail what Superman meant to the world. So I kind of felt a little bit emotional about that scene. I thought, yeah, well, he's talking to these children. This is cool. This is all right. So I had no issue. Then we go to Batman on the roof, kind of, trapping the parademon and talking to the thief. And I thought, okay, this looks like a Snyder sequence. Obviously, we found out it wasn't later on. But he did kind of a half-decent job of pretending it was Snyder's work. Again, no problem. Same with Diana at the museum and the Wonder Woman stuff and all of that when she's protecting the kids. I thought that was pretty awesome because most of that was Zack's anyway. And people are saying there's more to that scene, so I can't wait to see that. So these were initial moments. The Barry Allen stuff was perfectly fine. Obviously, the stuff with the guy with the kind of drawing the guy's fake glasses. Okay, still, I didn't have any problems. What I did find within the first half an hour or so, Whedon took a bit of time to introduce the characters his way. The problem was the film was only 2 hours, so this was problematic. So I thought the pacing was an issue at the beginning, but fair enough. You've got to introduce these characters. He and Sugihara made a rod for their own backs by cutting the time of the film. And I know that was Sugihara's decision and not Joss's decision. I'm sure Joss wasn't happy about that and just added the pressure that was put upon him. And so I only started realising, maybe in the middle of the film, I noticed croaky kind of green screens, fake backgrounds at the Kent farm. It started to look fake. It was only really when Superman resurfaces and you can see the horrible stuff, it gets worse. Do you bleed? You know, it was blatantly embarrassing, horrible VFX. And I started to have issues with the movie and I started feeling my heart thumping a little faster. And by the time we get to the end of the movie, I haven't been that underwhelmed. Well, I didn't think I'd be that underwhelmed again. But of course, when was The Last Jedi? Before or after? I can't remember now. But I was certainly or maybe even more underwhelmed with The Last Jedi. And the VFX on that film was excellent. In fact, it was the only thing I liked about Rian Johnson's movie, the VFX on The Last Jedi. So I kind of started thinking to myself, the DCEU's fucked. After seeing that, I felt to myself, the DCEU's fucked. And even then, I didn't kind of sit there saying, this is not Zack Snyder's, but it didn't feel like Zack Snyder's. So it was kind of obvious that it wasn't, but I had no evidence to prove so. And then the stories started coming out. And it was interesting because people were talking about Jeff Johns doing some really bad stuff and Joss Whedon and Sugihara. And you know what? I was always a Jeff Johns fan since I saw what he did on Smallville. I thought he did some great episodes of Smallville. Absolute Justice, I mean, is a diamond. And Legion, I think, was his best work on Smallville. So I really, really liked him as a creative, and I didn't want to believe he was a bad person. There came a point, but even though I didn't want to believe these people were bad people, I did want to see the genuine continuation of Zack Snyder's Batman vs. Superman and Man of Steel. And so I fought for the Snyder Cut even in the early days. It was only like going through the years and realising so much evidence was put in front of me, I couldn't deny it. I really accepted the truth about Jeff Johns and Joss Whedon when Ray Fisher started speaking. Once Ray, in the early days, when the film was first greenlit on HBO Max, started talking, I thought, well, Ray's saying it now. Ray's not lying. He's got no reason to lie. It's clearly the truth, and I can't protect Jeff Johns or Joss Whedon any longer. And that was really harrowing for me and bitterly disappointing for me, because when you have heroes, even though you don't know them, and they could be anyone or anything, we know that, of course, and when you find out who your heroes truly are and what they reveal themselves to be, it is heartbreaking, isn't it? And I always wanted to see the Snyder Cut. I must admit at the beginning, I wasn't sure if there was a Snyder Cut. And I'm talking about when they did the petition, the really early days. But I I knew there was a cut, don't get me wrong. I just wasn't sure if it was finished or not finished, because we all knew they did that video, that wrap-up video of finishing principal photography in London. And Zack thanked everyone in London, blah, 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 and his crew. So I knew he'd filmed a movie. So I knew that. I didn't know it was 4 hours long. I didn't know he had 5 hours. I didn't know he had a 2.5 hour cut. I didn't know all of that till later on. Zack started revealing it. And it's just a unique situation of circumstance. And then I woke up this morning because I couldn't sleep. I woke up about 3:30 this morning and didn't go back to sleep. I was on Twitter. You probably saw me posting on there. Lots of shit on there like I normally do, which upsets some, which makes some people unfollow me. That's life. If people are going to unfollow you, they're going to unfollow you over something you're going to say anyway. So, parting is a sweet sorrow, but it's probably for the best. So I asked myself this question this morning. How did Warner Brothers lose this fight against the release the Snyder Cut and the restore the Snyderverse community? A bunch of ordinary people. How did they lose it? Normally, in these situations, studios don't lose these situations. You'll get a petition. We've seen it before. We saw it with Lord and Miller with Star Wars: A Solo Story. They did film their own version that some fans wanted to see. But that fight stopped really quickly. I think what was in Zack's advantage, he'd already made Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. So he really wanted to see the genuine continuation of those films. And I think that really helped Zack. But there's more to it than that. How did they lose? How did they lose more than they ever thought? You know, drive Snyder out, make a 2-hour smiley film with lots of bright colours. It'll be fine. They made many mistakes. The mistakes that they made was that they were quite happy to put out in an inferior product as long as it was bright, bubbly and smiley, and then the new films that they were going to do could kind of pad over the cracks. The film's quality was so bad, and I'm not talking about the narrative or anything like that. The editing, the way it was shot, the VFX, it looked like a 2-year-old had done it. It was that bad. Steppenwolf, in comparison to Snyder's Steppenwolf, which we've seen in the trailers, it's that bad. They rushed out to put this film out so all the shareholders could make profit. They genuinely believed they could put out any old shit as Justice League, used a quarter of what Zack did, Zack and Chris Terrio's story, and kind of try and distance themselves from Batman vs Superman and somewhat away from Man of Steel, but not totally. After all, whatever you did, that Justice League that Whedon was making still had to continue from that because they were using all the same actors. There was no getting away from that. Now, ideally, you allow Snyder to finish his work, finish his arc and say, right, Zack, thank you, but we want to go in a different direction. I think as sad as that would have been to lose Zack, a filmmaker like that, I could have accepted that more than what they did here. It was insane. But the thing that really undone Warner Brothers, I think, was the information leaking out about the production. Where did that information come from? Who was leaking this information? The cast, the crew, and they were doing it for Zack. Jesus Christ, there was fans telling me and telling other people that Ray Fisher and Jason Momoa were telling them stuff unofficially. Because Ray Fisher even admitted that in his interview with Vanity Fair when they spoke to him on the set of the reshoots of Zack Snyder's Justice League. He didn't want to be professional anymore. He wanted people to know. But truly and honestly, Snyder was behind the leaks. That's the truth. That's what I'm asserting, allegedly. Yes, Zack said he didn't have the fight just after Autumn died. He walked away. But slowly but surely, it's clear to me that he raised himself up and dusted himself down, and he did want to fight. See, people don't realise this through his nice, smiley, friendly demeanour, but Zack is a fighter. He's a really strong dude, and he doesn't take shit off people. He's nice, he's polite, he's a gentleman. Clearly, that's the way he was brought up, and it's always great to have manners, but he's a fighter. We didn't make this happen alone. That's impossible. Without us, he needed us, because once he kind of gave us the fuel, we had to put it out there on social media. That's the way these things work. So he had us. That was vital. But he was the one leaking out the information. I think he's the one who got Subway to start hashtagging release the Snyder Cut. Unless the person who owns Subway loves Snyder and loves his work. That's the only other thing I can see. This is why Warner Brothers were undone. They fucked with the wrong Marine. In life, you can fuck with so many people, and these studios do all the time. And most of these people go quietly, like Lord and Miller did with Solo. They weren't happy. They posted a few tweets to make sure people knew the situation, but ultimately, you don't publicly come out and start talking about your dissatisfaction, and neither did Zack. But he knew he had a fan base. I didn't. I thought I was one of few who admired Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. Not many people, when we were getting the hate and the unhappy, Affleck memes was coming out in defence. There was a few, but not many. Not like there is now. It's insane. And as well as all of that, something else that really undone them that this movement, this fandom, us, are ruthless. We are ruthless. Some people have called us toxic. But sometimes in life you have to be ruthless to get what you want. A great wrong was done to this production. A great wrong was done to Zack Snyder. And he fought back. And he used us as his two arms. And it worked. And it took a very long time, and credit to all the fans, because we were hashtagging and doing stuff for so many years. I mean, this was going on from 2017 to 2020. Think about that. That's a long time to fight. I actually thought we would win. At a point in this fight, I thought we would win. Zach was saying he thought we might have to wait 10 years to see the Blu-ray or DVD. I didn't believe that. I didn't think this was a Donna cut of Superman 2 situation, because when that fight first started, there was no internet, or few people used it, like in the early noughties. But that fan campaign had gone on for many, many years. And don't forget, Donna didn't have all the footage of the movie to show. So he and somebody else, a VFX specialist, can't come in to help him. And they did it, but they still had to use some of Richard Lester's scenes, regrettably, which Dick said himself he didn't want to deal with because it hurt so much. It's excuse me. It's incredibly amazing to me how the Salkinds drove Donna off the project, a DC Superman Warner Brothers project, and Warner Brothers drove Zack off this project. It's funny how history repeats itself. And that's how I see it. That's how I see how we've got our big victory. It's because we stayed the distance. But without Zack guiding the ship, we wouldn't have done this. It was a team effort. Nobody does this kind of thing alone. You have to stand together with your director, your boss, as we call him, the boss, because he is. And we corrected a wrong. We corrected an injustice. And it's fantastic. A day away from the release of our victory. It's amazing. And we're not the only ones that are excited. Now, Gail Simmone is a very, very interesting case in point. Gail Simmone is a prolific, legendary, iconic comic book writer. I think she's done Marvel. I think she's done mostly DC. And she's very outspoken. A lot of fans have argued with Gail so many times. I've had heated discussions with her before. I've kept it as constructive as possible. So that's why I was very surprised yesterday to read a very long thread. And this is what she had to say about Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. Should we clear my throat so we can do this properly? Let's do this properly. Okay, let me tell you about the JLA, which is what she's calling it. There won't be any Snyder Cut spoilers. This is about the concept. When I was a kid, I lived on a farm. And we were poor. All I wanted to do was read. So I read everything I could find. But I read a lot. I read a lot I didn't love because it was there. My mom took me to a garage sale. There was a little stack of comics being sold for almost nothing. I saw an older comic and I just couldn't look away. I begged to get it. I didn't know who the characters were. It was this comic. I fell in love with comics that same night. I read that comic an untold number of times. I'm ashamed to say I cut out some of the art and put it on my wall. I had to know who all the characters were. I made little note cards to add information as I learned about them. I didn't know anything about comics. It was an older comic. It had been in someone's collection and it was the first part of a continued story. So I rode my bike every day to the drugstore in our little town, many miles from home, to see if they got the next chapter. I didn't know. I thought you just went to the store and asked for the next bit of the story. Anyway, that comic was my Pokemon, my Star Wars. It made me a comics fan forever. It was a big team-up issue, tons of characters, and I had to know them all. So for me, the comic has always been JLA. I never got over it. It was always the comic I had to check out even as I grew up and went to college and got married. It was always JLA. One of the things I loved was how epic the characters were. The Marvel style I grew to love that later, but as a kid, I didn't like to see my heroes squabbling all the time. I had enough of that in real life. My heroes were Superman, Batman, Flash, and yes, Wonder Woman. When I was in college, we were poor again, and it was often a choice between necessities and comics. I would usually choose comics. Wow. To this day, I am more starstruck meeting JLA creators than movie stars. We probably never grow out of that. Flash forward to years later, I end up a comic writer at DC, which is already an impossible dream. One day, very early in my career, the editor-in-chief at the time, Mike Carlin, calls me and asks if I would like to write 6 issues of Justice League. I could hardly speak. I got through the conversation and finally remembered to ask, okay, who is going to draw this? And Mike said, how do you feel about Jose Garcia Lopez? And I absolutely lost it. I had two favourite artists in the world, and Josie was one of them. Jose Garcia Lopez is a god of comic art. He's the artist other artists get tongue-tied even talking about. And he was going to draw my story, my JLA story. I have written a lot of comics since then, and I'm very proud of almost all of them. But my favourite artist on my favourite book for my favourite company with my favourite characters, if I never wrote another comic after that, I would still think I was the luckiest fan ever. You know what? When someone's this passionate about something, because there are a lot of opinions about Gail, she's very outspoken, but to read her passion is making me quite emotional. It turned out so beautiful. It's still a comic I just reread just to look at the art. And Jose was lovely, and I got to write Wonder Woman fighting Flash to save his life, and Jean creating bio armor, and well, I was very, very happy. Here's another cover to that story, Jose Garcia Lopez. There's no one better. Awesome. Years later, I got to write an episode of my favourite superhero animated series ever, Justice League Unlimited. It was an amazing animated series. If you haven't seen it, you should. And this is when people were comparing Justice League to those cartoons. I was very frustrated because those cartoons, led by Bruce Timm and his production, was something extremely special. And I haven't seen the Snyder Cut yet, so I've never seen the Justice League together apart from in that animation, and that is so special. So never compare that Premier League, that premium, to that piece of shit Whedon and Sugihara put together. It still felt like a direct line to that crumpled comic I found at a garage sale as a kid. I was so happy. All of this just to say something that may seem a little silly to some people, but not to me. Justice League was the moment that changed my life for the better. It made childhood bearable and adulthood a joy. Yeah, getting a bit emotional here. I take the JLA seriously. Wow. And this is how I feel about Superman the movie and Smallville and all these things that I've watched. And even the silly series like Knight Rider, the A-Team, all these things meant something to me as a child. So they are important to us. The sci-fi series V by Kenneth Johnson. I must do a review about it on this channel one day. These shaped me as a child. I know for a lot of people, maybe most people, the Avengers is hipper and all that. And I do love those movies. But the JLA felt like the heroes I wanted most in the world. So she's calling the film the JLA, remember that. Flash forward again to the theatrical cut of the Justice League movie. I liked it. I didn't hate it. But it didn't feel like the JLA to me. Despite incredible casting, it was entertaining and frustrating. But it felt like a shadow, like something the JLA really never was. Last night, I was excited, but cautiously so, to see the Zack Snyder version. I haven't kept up with most of the drama. I just didn't want my vision of the JLA to be all mixed up in that stuff. I got a preview invitation. My family gathered. We were making a night of it. As many of you know, Microsoft had a massive outage, and the film that we were scheduled to watch at 3 p.m. didn't start for us until 11 at night. I was tired from deadlines. It felt like kind of a bad omen. We figured we would watch an hour and see the rest the next day. Guess what happened? 10 minutes in, we were so hooked that wasn't even an option. We watched the whole thing until 3 a.m. And truthfully, all I've been thinking about since is watching it again. It is a different take on the JLA. It is not the perfect gods and goddesses that they are often portrayed as. That is a good thing. Every character has an arc. Some stuff that didn't work in the other cut comes out as the best part of the full version. It has heart and scope, and it's beautiful to look at and often achingly bittersweet at times. But it's not dour. It's not cynical. I don't want to say any more specifics, but I loved it. It feels finally like the other side of the coin to the Marvel films in a good way. This means a lot. This means a lot, man. That someone so legendary and iconic and talented like Gail is saying this stuff about something, about a director that I admire, because I love MOS and BVS and I can't wait to see this film. There's a lot I want to talk about. I have a million thoughts on it, but my advice is put aside all the internet nonsense and watch it with an open mind. A lot that I was nervous about was simply obliterated by the finished produce. That's a good thing. Like I said, the JLA is the biggest thing in comics to me and always has been. And like every kid in the pre-MCU era, I could only imagine a great film based on my favourite comic ever coming to be. What it did came to be. This JLA fan is a believer. That's it. See it, make up your own mind, but try not to let all this irrelevant baggage cloud your enjoyment. It so exceeded my expectations, and I know I won't be alone in that. I want to talk about it so bad, but for now, thumbs up. Thumbs way up. I know a bunch of people are going to bring nonsense to discussion of this movie. Don't let them ruin it for you. That's it. Thank you for listening. I'm very happy. Hope you will be too. Love to all the JLA fans and also the people who made this movie. Oh, and finally, the Amazons. Heart, 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 heart. Jay Oliver comments on this thread, which I didn't know. Glad you enjoyed it, Gail. When I worked on it, I knew it was something the fans would love. I was disappointed to see the original Whedon cut and thrilled when it was finally announced that Zack's vision would finally see the light of day. Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. It is emotional. It is emotional. Do you know what it's like? To love something like Man of Steel and BVS and see it hammered and hammered and hammered to death. Martha, this, that, it's too dark, it's too this, it's too that. Ah, Jesus Christ, shut the fuck up. That's how we felt, wasn't it? That's how we felt. I don't think Gail liked BVS either. But for her, and she does speak glowingly about things. She's very glowing about Birds of Prey and Captain Marvel. She's normally glowing about female-led superhero movies. So I don't take much notice. But she's never done a thread like this before. And it just goes to show you, someone, as I say, who's read JLA before, who's written JLA, it's in her DNA. And for her to be so glowing about a director she's never been glowing about before, that says something. You keep on asking me if we can restore the Snyderverse. It's restored. It's restored, my friends. There's no question about it now. 76 fucking % on Rotten Tomatoes. Now officially verified fresh. What more do you fucking want? I know those things are not important, but they are. When you're fighting for a franchise and a director, these things are fucking important. You have to understand how the bell rings. We started off this journey with Zack Snyder, and I didn't start it off with 300 or Watchmen. I watched those films once each, and I loved them. But they weren't a franchise I was interested in. But DC is my world, my universe. I've been in that universe since 1978 when I watched Superman the movie, and I was going to my dad, Dad, are they going to find out he's Clark Kent? That's when I embraced Superman. And then with Smallville, I learned so much about these DC characters and fell in love totally with the whole universe. I'm not really a comic book reader, although I've read comics and I know a bit, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not an aficionado, right? So for me, when I watched Man of Steel, to see it was the man made a film visually that was straight from the panels of the comics. The man's a genius. Nobody can make films like this individual. And we all know that. And to have this legend, whether you like her or not, she is a legend, right? Let's not disrespect people just because we haven't liked them in the past or haven't liked what they say. Gail Simmone is a legend. When someone writes such a long, emotional, passionate thread, I don't care who says it. If Jack the Ripper comes out the fucking grave and says Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut was amazing, right? And he says I'm going to spare Zack. I mean, he starts saying I'm Jack the Ripper, but Zack's all right, because he's made such a great movie. I'm going to listen. I don't care who says it, right? Because this isn't just someone. This isn't a shill. This isn't Kevin Smith. This woman is everything but a shill, right? So, Gail Simmone approves the Snyder Cut. And you're worried about what Helen O'Hara says or some other hater. Keep on swiping up. Keep on taking no notice of what these people have to say, because they're bitter and they're angry because they didn't just lose. They were handed their balls in a sling. And I know Helen O'Hara's a woman and she doesn't have balls, but we're talking about literal balls, right? I don't know why we're talking about balls, but there you go. Am I happy? I'm fucking delirious. Even though, I don't know if I definitely will be able to watch it. I want to watch it, as you know, but it's got to be available to me in this country of Cyprus, which most of you probably don't even know where it is on the radar. So it's difficult for me. I hope I can watch it. That's all I can say. This is the last video before hopefully I see this film. The next video I do will be a non-spoiler review where I go through all the characters and I talk about this film. And you finally find out what I think about this film. And oh boy, do I want to like it. But I won't lie to you. If I don't like it, I'm going to have to tell you. I expect to love it. The feedback I'm getting is sensational. And that's good. But I have to make my own mind up. And I have to be honest with you and the people on Twitter, because that's what I'm here for. Honestly, I'm a fanboy, I'm passionate. I want this film to be great. I have no reason to think this film isn't going to be great, because I already know what Zack Snyder's all about. He's about Man of Steel. He's about Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. So I don't have anything to worry about. And for you people who haven't seen it either, neither do you. You should be happy and excited. Shall we talk about Superman and Lois episode 4? Let's. Do you remember that writer of colour who quit, or I don't know what happened, the writer's room of Superman and Lois? She made a big statement that the CW and the people running the show were racist because she wanted to represent people of colour. I think she wanted Jonathan and Martha to be played by actors of colour, and they said no. So this is interesting because why am I going back into this again? So basically she was trying to say that they weren't interested in representation, right? Well, a funny thing struck me as I watched the episode, because the subplot literally starred an actor of Asian descent, or an American Asian actor, right? And I thought to myself, wait a minute, didn't that writer of colour, and I forgot your name and I'm sorry, I'm referring to you as a writer of colour, but it's important people understand where you're coming from with this. So something struck me. But this woman said there was no diversity, that these people are not interested in diversity. And we have an American Asian young man playing a part really, really well. And he's prominent in the episode. It's written well. He's not disrespected. Isn't this the inclusion and representation we want? So why did this lady start saying that they weren't interested in inclusion and representation? Could it be that this lady wasn't really interested in Asian representation or Native American or Latino representation, but was only interested in representing the most represented minority in Hollywood, people of colour? I don't want you to be offended by this. And by the way, I have no issue with actors of colour playing Jonathan and Martha. I think it would have been controversial for a lot of people and people would have lost their shit over it. But personally, I'm fine, because the actor the actors they chose weren't there for very long. So whoever they chose wasn't going to be there for very long. But even if they were, I wouldn't have cared. Just choose the best people and I'm fine. I personally think it would have maybe have been more interesting if Martha and Jonathan were still around, because in the comics, in some of the comics, Jonathan and Martha are still alive. But for the story they wanted to tell, they didn't want to do that. So that would have been kind of interesting, because if you want people of colour to play a role, right, and you want to represent and include, surely it would have been more interesting if Martha and Jonathan stick around. But they weren't going to be around for very long anyway. So the representation there was minimum. But Lana is played by a Latino actress, I think. Sarah, her daughter, I think, is also played by a Latino actor. The stranger is played by an actor of colour. The lad who was originally in the pilot, Sarah's boyfriend, is played by an actor of colour. So people of colour are represented, Latino people are represented, and now basically a young actor of, how I can only assume, of Asian American descent was represented by a really good Asian American actor. You see, inclusion and representation is important to me as well. And I might come across as not thinking that's the point, but it is. But as you can see, I'm passionate about great filmmaking, great storytelling, and great acting. So yes, represent, include, but never forget to entertain. And there's no bigger racism where you come out and say that a TV network doesn't want to be inclusive, when I've just explained to you that there's 2 people of colour on this production. There's actually 3 Latino actors. I think the actor who plays Sarah's father and Lana's husband is also a Latino actor, I think, right? And I think the mysterious woman with superpowers, I think she's also a Latino as well. So there's a mixture of representation on this production. So when you're a woman of colour who says that's not the case, I start to think, well, what are you talking about? And I just think she was a bit miffed why all the representation couldn't be people of colour. And here is the big problem. And everyone lost their shit. The CW are racist. But the CW are not racist. We've seen them represent LGBTQ characters and actors. They've done so on Supergirl. They've written a lot in their superhero shows about this. And Greg Berlanti has even written his own story about a gay young man, if I can remember rightly. The CW or Greg Berlanti are not racists. They're not bigots. That's one thing we can say. At times we've accused them of being too much that way, right? With the representation and inclusion, and not so much on good characterizations and good writing. So no one can accuse Greg or the CW of being racist. So I thought I'd intro my review of episode 4 of Superman and Lois like that. Right. We start the episode 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years, I think 6 years before. I can't remember where it's set. But anyway, we see these kind of jeeps and there's a meteor shower, right? So I'm thinking, these are real Smallville vibes here. But it's 6 years, so it couldn't be a flashback to Clark's arrival. So anyway, they keep on driving. Edge, what's his name? Edge. Should we just call him Mr. Edge? I actually remembered his last name, right? And when I was watching, I got to remember Morgan Edge. Morgan Edge, I remembered it, Morgan Edge. Please don't forget it. That's how bad my Swiss cheese brain is. Anyway, so Morgan Edge is there. They get to a crater with a little crystal there, and he goes kind of, the rebirth will begin, whatever that means. Now, the Asian American actor, the character, he's got this is a really big Smallville Easter egg, because in an episode of Smallville, the former ranch hand at the Kemp farm, Earl, has the shakes. And so does this young man. And so I thought, yeah, they're ripping off a bit of Smallville, but it's a bit of an Easter egg and it's fun. And basically in Smallville, Earl was basically working in a corn factory or something, right? Where Lionel Luthor, Lex Luthor's father, was actually experimenting on kryptonite dust. And this is how he was infected. So that's how this episode starts. And this is a very interesting episode because Sam Lane is really overprotective of Superman and Lois, but mostly Superman. So he comes back. He finds out that Jordan has got powers, or seems to have powers. He's not happy about it. He's not happy he's playing football. And he says to Clark, you're doing the wrong thing. This pisses Clark and Lois off, of course. And so basically, General Lane decides to stay at the Kent farm for a few days, even lecturing John and Jordan about not bothering their father with little issues when he's Superman. So they agree. There will be consequences towards that down the line in the episode. And so we don't see much of Superman in the first quarter of the episode. It's about him being the assistant coach. It's all about Jonathan, and Jordan is getting all the plaudits for being a great football player. John is getting a little bit jealous. I'm kind of interested in this dynamic because even though he's getting jealous, there's this kind of bond between them. I don't really know what they're doing with these two brothers and why they brought Jordan in as well as John, because John's in the comics and I think he has powers. Is he Superboy? A version of Superboy? I think. You see, you can tell I'm not that knowledgeable on all the comics. But they brought Jordan in as well. So because what it is, I was thinking about this today, and I said it on Twitter as well. The Smallville pilot put everything there on a plate for you. This is going to be our show. This is going to be young Clark Kent learning about his abilities, coming to terms with who he is in Smallville, and eventually one day when the show ends, becoming Superman. It was easy. He's going to have a dynamic with Lex. Lionel Luthor's there. We've got a great Jonathan and Martha, very, very visible and present in his life, a younger Jonathan and Martha. So, Snyder was very physically fit. He was playing a great role. It was working. We had the teenagers at school. We knew what this show was going to be. There wasn't much of a mystery box to unpackage. They obviously revealed lots of stuff as the 10 years unraveled. With this show in its pilot didn't really say this is... It does say this is what our show is, but it's kind of a mystery box show. Smallville wasn't really a mystery box show. I think most shows now are mystery box shows, so you don't really know what's going on with the stranger. You don't really know what's going on with the two brothers, but it's clear that Morgan Edge is the villain of part of the story, and if I jump to the end, it's very, very interesting, a bit predictable, if you like, that his female accomplice smashes this kind of wall and there's kryptonite. And he says, now the rebirth can truly begin. And she goes, how are we going to find individuals? He goes, well, I've got a good eye for talent. I found you, didn't I? Now that's interesting because there is a little theory going on that she's actually this universe's version of Supergirl. Wouldn't that piss off some of you fans of the Supergirl TV show, Mel Benoist, the great Supergirl? I think he said, I found you. This is interesting. Is she a Kryptonian? If that's their Kara, I'd be fine with it. I think this is awesome. We'll have to see how that all works out. Anyway, he's watching the kids playing football, Morgan Edge, with Lana's husband. His name escapes me. That character's really growing on me. I think he's playing an interesting role. We'll see what he actually is, if he's badder than I think he is, or if he's a good guy. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, he's trying to talk to Edge, and Edge is he's basically kissing Edge's butt, right? And Edge is like, I'm a posh Englishman, I don't want to talk to you. And all of a sudden he goes, yeah, that's my wife. And Edge is like, he's doing a Lucifer, right? He's going, And he's kind of focused, he's looking at her, and it's kind of weird. It's like, I don't know if he recognises her or he thinks, this is interesting. It's a bit weird. It could be that he's seen her and he thinks, well, I could give her some kryptonite, you know what I mean? Or he knows something about her. It was a bit odd how he just went, does it have to be women? Does it have to be women he gives this power to for some reason? I don't know. Maybe it is. Or we could be heading for something else about Lana. Maybe Lana has a natural ability. Could it be that Lana has some kind of power herself that she doesn't know? But he looks at her, as soon as he sees her, he's very interested for a reason. So all of a sudden, old Edge is interested in Lana's husband, and he goes, yes, you're coming out to dinner with me tonight. No, I don't care if you can't. Obviously, Lana's husband's like, Of course, yeah. I love you. I want you to take over this town. Shall I bend over and just be your boy? He's basically like that, isn't it? So the dinner's interesting. He corners Lana, makes her feel uncomfortable and says, oh, you've got so much potential. Why did you come here with a town full of no options and stuff like that? You can't really tell from her performance that she feels uncomfortable, but she kind of has a go at the husband because he's, oh, this is amazing. She goes, someone cornered your wife and you don't care. And they have this big argument. He gets upset that he's disappointed her again. So there's issues in the relationship. We don't really know why he's sleeping on the sofa yet. That'll be interesting. Is there been a bit of domestic violence? Maybe she... You see, this is interesting. It could be that she's the violent one. Maybe he knows she's got some kind of latent meteor ability. What's very obvious with Lois and, should I say Superman and Lois, that they are taking a lot of strands from the Smallville TV show. Obviously, we saw the tremors from the young teenager. That was interesting. So anyway, the episode goes on and you can see John's getting jealous, but it's not blatant. It's not a transparent jealousy you would get on many shows. It's a calming kind of, I'm jealous, but I still love my brother kind of thing. And so it becomes very, very interesting. And there's a party and this kid still has the tremors. And also what this episode does really well is show what a horrible situation in this universe Superman's in. He's under pressure to spend time with his family. Of course, he loves his family, wants to be with them, but he's got to be Superman as well. He's got his father-in-law, General Sam Lane, saying, forget the family, you're Superman. Daughter Lois, you knew what you were getting into, but Lois doesn't see it like that. Clark, you've got to spend time with us. So Lois, there's some good scenes with Lois and Morgan Edge, by the way, in this episode. Really good scenes. And what you actually get is something quite interesting. And what that is, in fact, is that she corners him at the mine because she's suspicious about the mine. Because beforehand, she sends, I think, the superpowered woman in. She doesn't use her superpowers and says, listen, you can't put that story in. You have an agreement when you were at the Daily Planet. If you do, we can sue you. So the editor of the Smallville Gazette saying, we ain't fucking going near this. Lois is really disappointed. So she corners him at the mine. She threatens him, but then he turns it around and says, listen, I could take you back at the Daily Planet, but let's face it, you're past your peak. So he's mocking her badly. And so I think we're starting to see that Lizzie Tulloch is doing a great job, and she's the Lois Lane that we've read in the comics, that we've seen in the movies, in the TV shows. There's never been a bad Lois Lane, in all honesty. But she's really good. So you're seeing this, and she says to Clark, listen, there's going to be a town meeting. There's going to be a vote. If everyone says yes, he's going to be allowed to use the mines. So everyone wants to say yes. She says, look, Clark, go down there. It can't be me because they know I'm biased, but you're part of the town. The town will listen to you. So Clark promises, yeah, I'll be there. But then this criminal whose name escapes me, right, basically he became a criminal from his hate of Superman. And the general says, listen, basically you realise the government and the army are getting very nervous about you when you change what you're doing. You move to Smallville, people are getting suspicious. Please, as a show of good faith, kind of help me with this prisoner transfer, right? And Superman says, no, if there's trouble, I'll be there, but no way. I ain't sacrificing time with my family just to, look after some prisoner. I kind of think, in my eyes, I think Superman was a bit stupid here, because if he was there from the beginning, he could have stopped him. Or maybe the trap, because he did have a trap for Superman anyway, maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. But Superman wasn't to know that. Let's not forget that. Anyway, the guy is a genius. Is he I don't think he's Toy Man, is he? I don't know who he is anyway. So he throws his gun. The truck blows up. He escapes. But he's created this gun. And I forgot what it is, but it can hurt Superman. And so Superman's kind of there at the party, or should I say Clark is. General Lane is pressing the Superman alarm as they've got it. And Superman's trying to deal with something at the party. And he says, sorry, John, I've got to go. So he goes. So you can see the struggle he's having of committing to his family and being Superman. My only criticism now is with the Superman stuff, you can kind of tell they don't have the budget. I did assume this was funded by HBO Max, because when we saw the trailer, it looked better than I think the actual show does when they're doing Superman. I think they kind of used the same kind of stock footage of Superman flying with closing up on his face. because we've seen that before, unless it's from the trailer. But we didn't really see anything more than we've already seen. He lands, the guy's got the ray gun on him, he's getting weaker and weaker, and then Superman hears John because the kid is shivering and they need Superman's help, but Superman's fighting this criminal. So as you can see, Superman's, between a rock and a hard place. And so that's the good element of the episode as well. And so what basically happens, Superman's able to do something and he spreads out this kind of zoom and he knocks the guy out. A bit easy if you ask me, a bit too easy, but it works out. He goes back, he flies the kid up in space and he calms down. So Jordan thinks that it's his fault the kid's got the powers because of the heat vision he used at the party, the previous party at the pilot. Of course, now General says to him, no, that's not possible. There was another presence there. So obviously something to do with what's going on with Morgan Edge. So it's interesting that for 2 episodes now, we really haven't, we had a quick kind of mention of the Stranger, but the Stranger hasn't been relevant for 2 episodes. But we get a really, really good ending where basically this Stranger gave the tag, didn't he, to General Lane, and it's got a number on it. So he rings up whoever, the government, and he says, I think we could have a problem. It's time to prepare for the scenario. So basically, he quotes the number on the tag, and basically it looks like he's saying to the government, Superman may be a problem. He may turn into this person. I don't know what made him form this opinion, so it's very interesting. It's really good they got Sam Lane there. So it's another episode where they've got this whole family, domestic thing versus Superman thing. It worked. Look, it's a really edgy, well-written show, and I really do like it. Now, I still don't think it's better than Smallville. And I know you're thinking, but he's Superman. The effects are half decent. It's good. It's edgy, as I've already said. Smallville did something that this show hasn't managed yet, and it's the character dynamics. The character dynamics on Smallville were just as epic and as exciting and interesting as the superhero action. Smallville did this kind of freak of the week thing. People didn't like it. In the first season, they did it every episode. People didn't like it. I didn't mind it because as well as the kind of character interactions, you had every episode, you had a character for Clark to find. And I think that was important. I think the character dynamics at this early stage are not as strong as maybe Smallville was at this same stage. As I say, they had all the pieces on the board, and it was kind of interesting, and it had its charm. There are lots of similarities to Smallville, and it certainly looks like the showrunners and Berlanti have looked at it and said, let's add some stuff here from that show. I like it. It's a good show. I really like the episode. It again did some interesting things. I hope we get the Stranger. We've got, what's his name? Ramsey, who played Diggle in Arrow. He's going to be directing an episode. David Ramsey, that's it. Crap with names, as you know. Episode 7. I'm not sure if he's actually going to be in the episode. I don't think he is, even though some people are telling me he is. So Superman and Lois doing really, really well. I've just realised something. By the time this video uploads, it will be the 18th for me. But I think for you Americans, it will be Wednesday evening. Anyway, that's what I'm planning for. Anyway, so how exciting is it that we're getting the Snyder Cut? For people who have already seen it, you're going to binge it to death on HBO Max. And for us, we're going to rent it as many times as we can. Hollywood is going to change forever. Today or the 18th or wherever you are when you're seeing this video, right? I can't plan for every single country, I'm sorry. But I'm so pumped because it's going to change. Keep on hashtagging Restore the Snyderverse. But you read what Gail Simmone said. We've already done it. That's why these haters are so angry. It's been a bitter war, but we've all come out the other end. I want you to enjoy this movie, as Gail said. Forget about what everyone's saying, their opinions. Make your own mind up. Watch it for yourself. Embrace it. I actually feel sorry for these people with families and children who can't watch it in peace. I think, was it Subjective Reviews was saying you had to watch it with his wife and child, or the child's mum, and they were talking. It was difficult. I live with my dad, but he'll be in the kitchen. He's in the kitchen throughout the day, and I'm in my room. For privacy, I have to write, I have to do Zoom meetings. So I'll be able to have it full blast on my own, no interruptions. Definitely going to switch my phone off because it's a distraction. I will not be tweeting in my first viewing. No, no, no. Now, maybe my second or third viewings, I may live tweet as I'm watching it. That will be fun because then I can interact with you guys as well. But as I've already said, the next time we see each other, it's so exciting. The next time we see each other will be on my first non-spoiler review of Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. And I can't wait. Comment down below, like, share and subscribe. And I'll be back next time to review Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. So see you again soon. Good luck and goodbye.